Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about the idol of stuff. Having stuff, wanting stuff, and what that looks like and what the Bible has to say. And so today I'm going to give you the ultimate life hack of how to be satisfied. But we're going to talk about it at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned and you check it out then. Thanksgiving is a holiday that a lot of people love. And I'm going to be honest and say that most people love Thanksgiving for the food and for football and time with family. I, however, would say that Thanksgiving is not one of my favorite holidays because of those reasons. I personally not the biggest fan of Thanksgiving food. I know that's unpopular. I just don't like mushy things, and I feel like Thanksgiving is just full of mushy casseroles and vegetables, which I'm not a big fan of, and so Thanksgiving food is just not my favorite, so I don't necessarily look forward to that. However, there is another part of Thanksgiving that happens here in society that I particularly love, and that is called Black Friday. And so we know that Black Friday is a big time shopping adventure for America, at least. We know that stores open like in the middle of the night and they stay open all till the next day for you to go and shop and get the best deals right before Christmas time. And so I personally love to shop, and because of that, Black Friday is like my go time because I get all the best deals and I get all these things that I would normally pay full price for, and I'm getting to pay less for, which is like only during this time. And so there's a lot of tension that comes and builds up to Black Friday, and you've seen the videos where people just go crazy. I will say personally, I'm not a crazy person like that. I do love my Black Friday, but people out there in our world you'll see trample over people. You'll see people take items from people's hands in line while shopping, which is just absolutely nuts. And I think this comes from this desire to have things, and we live in this tension in this world to have things. But I think that insanity part of it is because we live in this tension in the world that we desire to have stuff. And so that's kind of what we're talking about today. We're talking about the idol of stuff. And so if you remember, an idol is anything that you put before Jesus. So if anything is coming before Jesus, it is an idol. And so we see that our world is becoming more and more dissatisfied. That we're seeing that there is a desire for constant things, and we see this in our marketing. There's a fact that Americans receive anywhere between 4,000 and 10,000 ads a day, whether that be on social media, TikTok, the TV, like 4,000 to 10,000 ads that we are receiving a day. That is a quite big statistic that we are putting so much in our body of things that people are telling us what we need, what we should have, what we should want. So it only makes sense that if you're receiving that many times, that we're going to desire to then want it. And so we ultimately know that this could be leading us to more dissatisfaction, because the more we want, the more we don't have, the more that we are leaning to this fact that we're unhappy. We're not content with what we do have. In fact, the Bible talks a lot about it, and Jesus talks a lot about what it's like to have things and wanting things, because he knew that this tension of having stuff, this idol of stuff, was going to be an issue in our world. And so we're going to look at Luke 12, and that is going to be the parable of the rich fool. And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produces plentiful. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "Fool, This night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And so basically, there was a rich man, a rich fool, who had lots of land, and it was very fertile. And so that season was really great for him. And so whatever he was growing during that time, he had an abundance of it. And that's not a usual case for him. And so where he usually stored his grain or whatever he was growing, which it does say grain, he didn't have room for it. And so basically he was like, okay, well, if I don't have room to keep all of this to sustain me, to sell for the rest of my life so I can retire, I need to build something bigger, and I need to build something better to keep it all. And so that's what he did. And so he went ahead, he built a bigger barn to keep all of the crops that he had produced that year. So that way he could store them up, he could sell them periodically throughout his life, and he would never have to work again. And so we see that in this story, that after he does this, after that the man builds bigger, he builds better, he dies, which is like, whoa, plot twist. And so Jesus essentially is telling us in this story that when you lay up your treasure, when you keep your treasure and you don't do anything with it, you don't use it for the kingdom, it goes to waste. This man worked up his entire life so he could just relax, chill, live, laugh, love in his life. For what? For basically for nothing. And so the point that Jesus was trying to make to these people is that when you have things and you don't use them for a kingdom mindset, it's wasteful. And he actually calls the man a fool. And so Jesus considers someone a fool when they have possessions that they're not using for the kingdom. And so it says in verses 20, he says, but God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you. This is when he died. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? And so Jesus is saying that there was no plan for what he had to give to anybody. And it says, so the one who lays up his treasure for himself is not rich towards God. Okay, so we can learn a couple of things from this story. We can learn that the first is that we are to not be greedy. And we see this in a warning that Jesus told the rich fool's brother earlier in this passage. And so that's verses 13 through 15, and I'm going to read that. It says, someone in the crowd said to him, teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. But he said to him, man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you? And he said to them, take care and be on your guard against all greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And we see this as a warning from Jesus that greed will never be satisfied. And so if we are living in the abundance of what we have, our life will be taken over. And so that is point one, that we are to not be greedy. And two is that we should not place our value in things that do not last. And so what does that mean? That means that ultimately the things that we have on this earth are going to fail us. We think of phones, we think of laptops, I think of shoes, I think of anything that we own. Eventually it's going to wear out. Yes, it may last for a long time. Maybe the more money we put into it, the more nicer things we buy, the longer it will last, but eventually it's going to die. Eventually those shoes are going to get dirty. Those phones batteries are going to, we all know that once the new phone comes out, our Apple battery dies. And so there is a consistent thing that the things of this world are going to end up failing us. And so Jesus is telling us in this passage that don't place your value in that. Don't place your value in the things that aren't going to last. But what you should be placing your value in are the things that are going to last. And that is Jesus. That is the fact that we get to live with him in eternity. And the last thing that this passage teaches is that we are going to be held accountable before Jesus for the things that we spend our money on, the things that we spend our time on, and the value that we placed on in this earth. And we saw that the rich fool was not ready. We saw that he was not at all thinking that he was going to die, that he had no plan for the riches that he had. He had no plans to give them away to people. He had no plans on what they were going to do with them. He kept them all all for himself. However, we know that since the rich fool wasn't ready, that maybe we should be ready. Maybe there are things in our life that we should be ready for, to be held accountable. And so when you're making decisions in your life about what you own and what you have, you should keep in mind that we're gonna talk to Jesus one day and tell him the things that we spend our money on, the things that we spend our time on. And so, which can kind of sound a little scary, and it's not meant to, but it's for us to have this understanding that things of this world can control us. And when they come before Jesus, they are ultimately going to fail us. We know that we aren't to be greedy with the things that we are given, because having things ultimately isn't a bad thing, but it's our heart posture, how we use them, how we steward what we have, is what Jesus is kind of asking us to be aware about. And so we know to not be greedy. We know that we shouldn't place value on these things in the world that aren't going to ultimately last. We know that we're going to be held accountable for what we do place our value in. So how can we walk away from this story and apply this to what our lives look like today? 3 of your favorite things that you can't just live without. And I would ask you, as you're looking at them, if they were to walk away from your life, or for whatever reason these 3 things were to disappear, they were to get stolen, they were to be taken from you, would you be okay? Would you be sad? Ultimately, probably yes, but would you be okay? Would you be able to know that just because I don't have these things anymore, my life ultimately isn't over? And so if you are struggling saying, oh, I really think if I didn't have this, then I probably wouldn't be okay, then maybe this should be an awareness for you. Maybe this is an awareness of, hey, I'm not quite sure that this may not be an idol in my life. That maybe I should be looking seriously about what I'm owning, because maybe it's controlling me in a way that Jesus is not desiring of us. And so maybe I'm placing my value in it and not my value in Jesus. And so another thing that we can ask ourselves is, what are we longing for? What are we longing for and why? And so when we're trying to apply this story to our life, maybe that is a great question that we should be asking us, is the things that we are hoping for, the things that we are desiring of, the next new whatever, fill in the blank. Why are we wanting that? Where is that desire coming from? Is that desire coming from a hole that we need to allow Jesus to come into? Or is it coming from a place of, I want to be shown in a way to society because I have this? So whatever that is, maybe that is a question we should be asking ourselves. And so again, when we are buying new things, because obviously that's never not going to happen again, but maybe you should be asking yourself a question, maybe having some more awareness about the things that we're purchasing. You should ask yourself, do I need it or do I want it? And if it's not a big need, then why am I wanting it? What is the root? Am I wanting it because I want my friends to think I'm cool? Am I wanting it because I want to be the most popular person? Am I wanting it because I just want it? I don't know what that's going to look like, but asking yourself those questions, being more self-aware of the things that we're possessing on this earth, I think is what Jesus would ask us to do. And so then I would also challenge you to ask is, can this further me in the kingdom of God? So whatever that item may look like, whatever you're desiring, whatever you might be buying, like, can this further the kingdom of God? And if it doesn't, then maybe that's a serious question of, should you really have it? And last, I would say that we should just be generous people. There's people all over this world that have hardly anything, and fortunately we live in a society that has so much. And so I ask you to be generous with your time. I think we should be generous with our money, with our gifts that we own. And I think we are furthering the kingdom by doing so. And so if you remember, I told you that there is a ultimate life hack to being satisfied. And so here it is. Jesus plus nothing else equals everything. However, everything plus Jesus, so when everything comes before Jesus, you're left with nothing. And so I just want you to think about that, and thanks for listening. Like, subscribe,